The champagne glass felt heavier than it should have in my hand as I watched my wife perform for our guests. Meira had that particular smile plastered across her face, the one she reserved for important occasions when she needed everyone to believe we were the perfect couple. "Soren, darling, come tell everyone about that security contract you landed," she called across our living room, her voice carrying that fake sweetness that made my teeth ache. "I'm Soren Valden, 38 years old, and I run a high-end security consulting firm here in the Boston suburbs. Tonight, we were hosting what Meira called an intimate gathering for 40 of our closest friends, colleagues, and family members. The kind of party where everyone dressed to impress and spoke in careful, measured tones, while mentally cataloging who wore what and who said what to whom. Our house was perfect for entertaining, modern, expensive, with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the manicured lawn and made everything feel open and airy. Meira had spent weeks planning every detail, from the catered appetizers to the playlist that somehow managed to be both sophisticated and accessible. I made my way through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces. There was Jenkins from my office, still wearing his perpetual worried expression. Meira's mother, Patricia, held court near the fireplace, regaling anyone who would listen with stories about her latest charity fundraiser. And there, leaning against the kitchen island with practiced casualness, was Erik Delacroix. Erik was Meira's ex-boyfriend from college, now a successful tech startup CEO who drove a Tesla and wore designer suits that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He had that confident smile that came from never having been told no about anything that mattered to him. Meira claimed they were just friends now, but I'd noticed how she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes and found excuses to touch his arm when they talked. "The contract's going well," I said, joining the conversation circle that had formed around Meira. "Corporate security is booming these days. Everyone's paranoid about something." "Speaking of paranoia," Erik said with a grin, "remember when you used to check Meira's phone obsessively in college? What was that about?" The group chuckled politely. I felt that familiar tightness in my chest that came whenever Erik decided to needle me, but I kept my expression neutral. "Different times," I said. "We were kids." "Oh, we were definitely kids," Meira agreed, taking a sip of her wine. Her cheeks were already flushed from the alcohol. "I made some questionable choices back then." "Like dating me instead of Erik?" I asked, keeping my tone light and joking. The words hung in the air for a moment. I watched as something shifted in Meira's expression, a flicker of something I couldn't quite identify. "Well," she said, her voice carrying just a hint of something sharp, "we all have our regrets, don't we?" The circle of friends went quiet. I felt every eye in the group focus on us, waiting to see how I'd respond. Erik's smile widened slightly, like he was enjoying a private joke. "Some regrets are bigger than others," I replied, matching her tone exactly. "Like how you regret not being closer to your sister Lara." Now it was Meira's turn to look uncomfortable. Lara, her younger sister, had always been a sore spot between us. Lara was everything Meira pretended to be, genuinely funny, effortlessly beautiful, and completely honest about her opinions. She was also standing about 10 feet away, close enough to hear every word. "We can fix that," Lara called out, raising her wine glass in a mock toast. "And maybe some other things too." The room went completely silent. I could hear the soft jazz music playing from the speakers, the distant hum of conversation from the kitchen, and my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. Lara's boyfriend, a harmless guy named Dave who worked in marketing, looked confused. Patricia had stopped talking mid-sentence. Even Jenkins was staring. Meira's face had gone pale, then flushed red. Erik was no longer smiling. He was watching the scene unfold with the intense focus of someone who had a stake in the outcome. "Well," I said, forcing a laugh, "this got interesting fast." The tension broke as people began talking again, but I could feel the undercurrent of excitement that comes when people witness potential drama. This would be the story everyone told their spouses when they got home tonight. The moment when the Valden marriage showed its cracks in public. I excused myself and headed toward the kitchen, ostensibly to check on the catering staff. But really, I needed a moment to process what had just happened. As I walked away, I heard Meira's forced laughter resume, louder than before. In the kitchen, I found myself alone for the first time all evening. The catering staff had everything under control, so I leaned against the counter and pulled out my phone. My hands were steadier than I expected as I opened the app I'd installed months ago, a perfectly legal piece of software that helped me monitor our home network for security purposes. The same software that happened to track all devices connected to our Wi-Fi, including Meira's phone. I'd been suspicious for weeks. Little things. Late nights at the office, new clothes, a sudden interest in going out with her girlfriends more often. The kind of changes that could mean anything or nothing, depending on your perspective. But tonight felt different. Tonight felt like confirmation. I scrolled through the network activity logs, looking for anything unusual. What I found made my stomach drop. Meira's phone had been sending and receiving an unusual amount of data to a messaging app I didn't recognize. An app that wasn't installed on her main screen, hidden away in a folder labeled Work Stuff. My security training kicked in. I knew exactly how to clone a device's data remotely, especially when that device was connected to a network I controlled. It took less than 5 minutes to mirror her hidden messages to my phone. The first message I saw was from 3 hours ago, sent to a group chat called Operation Regret. Erik. He's setting up perfectly. Meira, you sure you can go through with this? Meira. It's cruel, but he needs to learn. He's been too comfortable for too long. Lara. I still think this is harsh, but you're my sister. Let's see if he'll break yet. I'm in. Unknown number. This is going to be epic. I can't wait to see his face. I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages. They'd been planning this for a month. Not just the humiliation at the party, but a systematic campaign to break down my confidence, make me question my worth, and ultimately drive me to some kind of public breakdown that they could all laugh about. There were betting pools on how I'd react, detailed discussions about which buttons to push and when, screenshots of my text messages that Meira had shared with the group, accompanied by mocking commentary. But the worst part was realizing that this wasn't just about Meira and Erik. This was a group effort involving people I'd considered friends, family members, and apparently my own sister-in-law. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I heard footsteps approaching and quickly closed the app. Lara appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking uncharacteristically serious. You okay? She asked. You looked pretty shaken up out there. Just processing, I said. Your comment was unexpected. She studied my face for a moment. Soren, can I ask you something? Do you trust Meira? The question caught me off guard. She's my wife. That's not what I asked. Before I could respond, Meira herself appeared, slightly breathless and clearly having hurried to find us. There you are, she said, her voice bright and artificial. People are asking where the host went. Just checking on things, I said. Everything's under control. Good, she said, but her eyes were darting between Lara and me, trying to read the situation. I looked at my wife, really looked at her. The woman I'd married 5 years ago, who'd promised to love and honor me, who shared my bed and my bank account and my dreams for the future. The woman who was apparently running a psychological experiment designed to destroy my self-respect for the entertainment of her friends. I should get back to our guests, I said. As I walked past them both, I heard Lara say quietly, Meira, we need to talk. But I was already moving, already planning. Because here's the thing about being in the security business. You learn to think several steps ahead. you learn to gather intelligence before you act, and you learn that the best defense is often a devastating offense. The party continued around me, but I was no longer really there. I was thinking about network logs and message histories and the beautiful, terrible possibilities that lay ahead. Game on. The next morning, I sat in my office reviewing the complete picture of what I'd uncovered. My brother Nicholas had arrived an hour earlier, bringing coffee and his particular brand of calm competence that came from 20 years as a police detective before he joined my security firm. "This is comprehensive," he said, scrolling through the printed messages I'd laid out on my desk. "They really documented everything." "Criminals always do," I replied. "They can't help themselves. They want to remember how clever they were." Nicholas looked up at me with those sharp gray eyes that had intimidated countless suspects over the years. "What's your play here, Soren?" "I'm still deciding, but I want to understand the full scope first." We'd been working since dawn, building a timeline of the conspiracy. It had started 6 weeks ago when Erik had moved back to Boston for his startup launch. He'd reached out to Meira under the guise of networking, and within days they were meeting for coffee, then lunch, then longer conversations that stretched into the evening. The group chat revealed the evolution of their plan. Initially, it seemed like Erik just wanted to cause some marital friction, maybe get Meira to leave me and come back to him, but it had grown into something more elaborate and cruel. They'd recruited Meira's friends, Jennifer and Amanda, both of whom had their own grievances against me for various perceived slights over the years. "Look at this," Nicholas said, pointing to a message from 2 weeks ago. "They're not just trying to humiliate you. They're planning to isolate you completely." He was right. The messages detailed plans to turn our mutual friends against me, to spread rumors about my business practices, even to contact my clients with vague concerns about my stability. It was character assassination disguised as concern. But the most interesting revelation was Lara's role. Reading through her messages, I could see her growing discomfort with the plan. She'd started asking questions, pushing back on the crueler elements, and eventually expressing outright doubt about the whole enterprise. "Your sister-in-law might be having second thoughts," Nicholas observed. "Maybe, or maybe she's just a better actress than the rest of them." My phone buzzed with a text from Meira. "Running errands today. Dinner with Amanda tonight. Don't wait up." I showed the message to Nicholas. He pulled up the group chat logs and found the real plan. Meira was meeting Erik at his downtown condo for what the messages delicately referred to as Phase 2 of their operation. "They're escalating," I said. "What do you want to do about it?" I leaned back in my chair, considering. In my business, you learn that information is only valuable if you know how to use it. I had plenty of information now. The question was timing and strategy. "I think it's time for a family dinner," I said. That evening, I called Patricia and suggested we all get together at her house. Her dining room had a large table and a big screen TV that I knew would come in handy. I made it sound spontaneous, the kind of impromptu gathering that Patricia loved to host. Meira tried to beg off, claiming her dinner plans with Amanda, but Patricia wouldn't hear of it. "Family comes first, dear. Amanda will understand." By 7 o'clock, we were all gathered around Patricia's mahogany dining table. Meira sat across from me, checking her phone constantly and clearly irritated about missing her real plans. Lara was there with Dave, who seemed oblivious to any tension. Patricia had prepared enough food for twice as many people, as always. "Before we eat," I said, standing up, "I thought you might all enjoy seeing some highlights from last night's party." I'd prepared a simple video compilation. Nothing fancy, just audio clips set to still photos from the evening. It started with normal party conversation, people laughing and chatting. Then came the key moment. Meira's regrets comment, followed by my response, followed by Lara's, "We can fix that." The room went quiet as the audio played through the TV speakers. When it ended, I looked around the table. "Interesting choice of words," I said, "especially that last part." Meira's face had gone pale. Soren, this is ridiculous. It was just party banter. Was it? I pulled out my phone and opened the group chat screenshots. Because I have some context that might change how we interpret those words. I read selected messages aloud, watching as the color drained completely from Meira's face. Patricia's expression shifted from confusion to shock to something approaching fury. Dave looked like he wished he was anywhere else, and Lara was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. This is taken out of context, Meira stammered. You're making it sound worse than it was. Am I? I scrolled to another message. Here's Erik talking about how pathetic I am. Here's Jennifer betting on whether I'll cry when you leave me. Here's Amanda suggesting they should record my reaction for posterity. Patricia set down her fork with a sharp click. Meira Elizabeth Valden, what is the meaning of this? Mom, he's twisting everything. Those messages, they don't mean what he's saying they mean. But I wasn't done. I'd saved the best for last. A series of messages where Meira had shared private details about our marriage, intimate conversations she'd twisted into ammunition for the group's amusement. Stop, Lara said suddenly. Just stop. Everyone turned to look at her. She was staring at her sister with something that looked like disgust. Lara, don't, Meira warned. No, this is wrong, Lara continued. Soren, I need to tell you something. I was never really part of this. I mean, I was in the group chat, but I was trying to talk Meira out of it. I have screenshots of my own that show how this really went down. The betrayal on Meira's face was immediate and complete. You wouldn't. I already did, Lara said quietly. I sent them to Soren this afternoon. I pulled out the additional screenshots Lara had provided. Messages that showed her arguing against the plan, calling it cruel and unnecessary, eventually threatening to tell me everything if they didn't stop. Patricia was reading over my shoulder, her face growing darker with each message. Meira, how could you do this to your husband, to your family? It was just supposed to be a joke, Meira said, but her voice lacked conviction. A joke that involved destroying my reputation and my business relationships? I asked. A joke that required you to share intimate details of our marriage with your ex-boyfriend? The room fell silent except for the ticking of Patricia's antique clock. I could see Meira calculating, trying to find an angle that would let her salvage the situation. You went through my phone, she said finally. That's a violation of my privacy. I monitored my own network for security purposes, I replied. Perfectly legal, unlike conspiracy to commit defamation. You can't prove anything. I smiled for the first time that evening. Meira, I'm a security consultant. Proving things is literally what I do for a living. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I don't have to listen to this. Actually, you do, Patricia said coldly. Sit down. The authority in her mother's voice made Meira freeze. Patricia might be in her 60s, but she'd raised 3 daughters and run a successful real estate business for 30 years. When she used that tone, people listened. Sit, Patricia repeated. Meira sat. Now, Patricia continued, you're going to explain to me exactly what you thought you were accomplishing with this scheme. What followed was 20 minutes of the most uncomfortable conversation I'd ever witnessed. Patricia methodically dismantled every excuse Meira offered, while Lara provided additional context that made everything worse. Dave sat in stunned silence, occasionally glancing at the door like he was planning an escape route. By the end, Meira was crying, not the pretty, delicate tears she used when she wanted sympathy, but ugly, desperate sobs that came from realizing how completely she'd miscalculated. I want you out of my house, Patricia said finally. And don't bother coming to Sunday dinner until you've figured out how to apologize properly for this disgrace. Meira looked around the table desperately, searching for an ally. She found none. Soren, she said, can we at least talk about this privately? We'll talk, I agreed. But not tonight. Tonight, I think you should stay at Amanda's, since you two are such close collaborators." She left without another word. Through the window, we watched her car disappear down the street, tail lights fading into the darkness. "I'm sorry," Lara said after a long silence. "I should have told you sooner." "Why didn't you?" "Because she's my sister. Because I hoped she'd come to her senses." She paused. "Because I was scared of what would happen when you found out." I looked at her carefully. "What did you think would happen?" "I thought you'd leave her. And despite everything, I wasn't sure that's what I wanted." "And now?" Lara met my eyes. "Now I think she's made her choice, and she has to live with the consequences." Patricia was already clearing dishes, her movements sharp and efficient. "Soren, dear, you're welcome to stay here tonight if you need space to think." "Thank you, but I'll go home. I have some planning to do." As I drove back through the quiet suburban streets, I felt something I hadn't experienced in weeks. Clarity. The uncertainty was over. The wondering and second-guessing had ended. Now I knew exactly what I was dealing with, and I could plan accordingly. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Heard about dinner. This isn't over." Erik. Of course. I pulled over and typed back, "You're right. It's just getting started." Then I called Nicholas. "How did it go?" he asked. "Better than expected. Lara's on our side, Patricia's furious, and Meira just made a very public tactical error." "What's next?" "Now we go on offense, and Erik just volunteered to be our first target." The next morning, I was reviewing security footage from our home system when I spotted Meira's car pulling into our driveway. She sat there for several minutes before getting out, and I could see her rehearsing something in the rearview mirror, probably the speech she'd prepared to try to salvage the situation. I met her at the front door before she could use her key. "We need to talk," she said immediately. "I agree, but not inside." Her face fell. "Soren, this is my home too." "Is it?" "Because the messages I read suggest you've been planning to leave for weeks." We ended up in my office parking lot, sitting in our respective cars with the windows down. It felt appropriately ridiculous. A married couple negotiating the terms of their relationship from separate vehicles in a corporate parking garage. "I want to explain," she began. "Go ahead." "It started as just venting. You know how it is when you're frustrated with someone. You complain to your friends." "Show me the messages where you were just venting," I said, because what I saw looked more like strategic planning. She was quiet for a long moment. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." "You've gotten comfortable. We both have. Our marriage has become predictable, boring. So you decided to fix that by humiliating me publicly?" "I thought if you felt like you might lose me, you'd start trying harder." I stared at her. "Meira, do you hear yourself? You orchestrated a psychological campaign designed to make me feel worthless, and you're calling it marriage counseling? That's not what it was." "Then what was it?" She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "It got out of hand." "When? When you shared details about our intimate life with Erik? When you made bets about my emotional breakdown? When you planned to contact my clients to sabotage my business?" "We weren't actually going to do that last part. According to the messages, you were scheduled to start making calls today." Her silence confirmed it. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued. "You're going to call Erik, Jennifer, and Amanda. You're going to tell them the plan is over. You're going to apologize for involving them in something that was none of their business. And if I don't, then I'll handle it myself. And you won't like how I handle it." She studied my face, perhaps recognizing something she hadn't seen before. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm promising you. This ends now, or it ends badly." What I didn't tell her was that it was already too late. While she'd been getting ready for this conversation, I'd been implementing phase 1 of my own plan. The night before, after leaving Patricia's house, I'd spent 3 hours crafting a detailed report of the conspiracy. Not the raw messages. Those were too private and potentially embarrassing for me as well. Instead, I'd created a sanitized version that focused on the business implications. A group of people planning to damage my professional reputation through false claims and coordinated rumor campaigns. I'd sent this report to 3 people: my lawyer, my business insurance carrier, and the president of the Boston Security Professionals Association, of which I was a member in good standing. By morning, all 3 had responded with concern and offers of support. My lawyer was already drafting cease and desist letters. My insurance company was documenting the threat for potential future claims. And the association president had quietly reached out to several of my clients to give them a heads up about possible disgruntled former associates who might contact them with false information. In the security business, reputation is everything. An attack on my professional credibility was something the entire industry would take seriously. I called them, Meira said, interrupting my thoughts. I told them it was over. Good. What did they say? Jennifer was upset. Amanda said I was making a mistake. She paused. Erik said you were bluffing. Did he? He thinks you don't have the spine for a real fight. I smiled. Erik's about to learn something interesting about assumptions. That afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I recognized Erik's voice immediately. We should meet, he said without preamble. Should we? This has gone far enough. Meira's family is involved now, and that wasn't part of the plan. Your plan, you mean? The plan to destroy my marriage and my business for your entertainment. It was never supposed to be that serious. Then you're not as smart as you think you are. There was a long pause. What do you want? I want you to leave my wife alone. I want you to leave Boston, and I want you to never contact any member of my family again. That's not going to happen. Then we have a problem. Soren, you don't know who you're messing with. I have resources you can't imagine. Funny thing about resources, I said. They're only useful if you know how to use them properly. I hung up and immediately called Nicholas. Erik just made his first mistake, I told him. What's that? He thinks this is about money and connections. He doesn't understand that it's about information. That evening, I had dinner with Lara and Dave at a quiet restaurant downtown. Dave spent most of the meal looking uncomfortable. He clearly wanted to support his girlfriend, but wasn't sure how to navigate the family drama. Meira's been calling me all day, Lara said over dessert. She wants me to convince you to drop this. What did you tell her? That she made her choice when she decided to involve Erik. You really think this is about Erik? Lara considered the question. I think Erik gave her permission to do something she already wanted to do. He made it seem exciting instead of just cruel. And what did she want to do? Hurt you. I don't think she knows why, but she's been angry with you for months, maybe longer. This was new information. Angry about what? I think she's angry that you're happy, that you're successful, that you don't need her the way she needs to be needed. Dave finally spoke up. For what it's worth, I never understood what her problem was. You guys always seemed solid to me. Appearances can be deceiving, I said. Yeah, but you actually listen when she talks. You remember things she tells you. You support her career. He shrugged. My buddies are always complaining about their wives, but I never heard you do that. Lara reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's the problem. She wanted drama, and you wouldn't give it to her, so she created her own. After dinner, as we walked to our cars, Lara pulled me aside. There's something else, she said quietly. Something I didn't mention yesterday. What? Erik's been having financial problems. His startup is failing, and he's been looking for investors. I think part of this was about getting back together with Meira so he could access your money. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. How do you know this? Amanda told Jennifer, and Jennifer told me. Erik's been asking questions about your business, your client list, Your financial situation. He's been doing research. Research for what? I think he was planning to propose some kind of business partnership after he broke up your marriage. Swoop in as the supportive friend, offer to help you get back on your feet, then gradually take over your client relationships. The pieces clicked into place. This wasn't just about humiliation or revenge or even winning Meira back. This was about money. Erik had identified me as a target with resources he wanted, and he'd crafted an elaborate plan to access those resources by destroying my personal life and then positioning himself as my savior. Lara, I need you to do something for me. What? I need you to call Jennifer and Amanda. Tell them you're worried about Meira getting in over her head with Erik. Ask them what they know about his business situation. You want me to spy on them? I want you to protect your sister from making an even bigger mistake. She nodded slowly. I can do that. As I drove home, I felt the familiar satisfaction that came from understanding an opponent's real motivations. Erik wasn't just a jealous ex-boyfriend or a bored rich guy looking for entertainment. He was a desperate man with failing business and mounting debts, and he'd identified my marriage as the weak point he could exploit to solve his problems. That changed everything, because desperate men make predictable mistakes, and predictable mistakes create opportunities. My phone buzzed with a text from Meira. Coming home tonight. We need to figure this out. I typed back, door will be locked. You should stay wherever you've been staying. Soren, please, this is still my house. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. There was a long pause before her response. What do you mean? I mean the house is in my name only. Always has been. You might want to call a lawyer. It was true. When we'd bought the house, my credit score had been better, so we'd put everything in my name with the intention of adding her later. We'd never gotten around to it. Her next message came an hour later. This is cruel. I didn't respond, because cruelty was planning to destroy someone's life for entertainment. What I was doing was just consequences. Erik's retaliation came at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday. I woke to the sound of my car alarm and found all 4 tires slashed, with a note tucked under the windshield wiper. This is just the beginning. I called the police, filed a report, and had the car towed to a shop. Then I called Nicholas. He's escalating to property damage, I told him. You have cameras? Of course I have cameras. The footage was perfect. Erik's Tesla pulling up at 2:47 a.m., Erik getting out with a knife, Erik methodically slashing each tire, Erik leaving the note. His face was clearly visible in the infrared recording. This is good, Nicholas said, reviewing the footage. He just handed us a felony. I don't want to file charges yet. Why not? Because I want him to think he's winning. Desperate men make bigger mistakes when they think they have the upper hand. Instead of calling the police about Erik, I did something else. I called his biggest investor. It had taken me 2 days to research Erik's business relationships, but the information wasn't hard to find. His startup, a company called TechFlow Solutions, had received a major investment from a venture capital firm called Morrison Partners. The managing partner was a man named Robert Morrison, who had a reputation for being extremely thorough in his due diligence. Mr. Morrison, I said when his assistant put me through, I'm calling about Erik Delacroix and TechFlow Solutions. I have some security concerns I think you should be aware of. What kind of security concerns? The kind that involve criminal behavior and potential liability for your firm. We met that afternoon at Morrison's downtown office. I brought printouts of the tire-slashing footage, copies of Erik's threatening messages, and a detailed timeline of his harassment campaign. This man is your business partner? Morrison asked, studying the evidence. He's received significant investment from your firm, yes, and based on his recent behavior, I'm concerned about his judgment and stability. Morrison was quiet for a long time. Mr. Valden, why are you bringing this to me instead of the police? Because I thought you should know what kind of person you're in business with before this becomes a public matter. And you want what, exactly? I want Erik to understand that actions have consequences. I want him to stop harassing my family. And I want him to face the reality that his behavior has professional implications. Morrison nodded slowly. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. We'll be conducting a thorough review of Mr. Delacroix's conduct and its potential impact on our investment. I left the meeting feeling satisfied. In the venture capital world, reputation was everything. A partner who engaged in criminal harassment wasn't just a liability. He was a threat to every deal the firm had ever made. That evening, I was working late in my office when Meira showed up. She looked terrible, exhausted, stressed, and angry. You got Erik in trouble with his investors, she said without preamble. Erik got himself in trouble when he decided to slash my tires. He was just trying to get your attention. Well, he got it. And now he has Morrison Partners' attention too. She slumped into the chair across from my desk. Soren, this has to stop. You're destroying people's lives. I'm documenting criminal behavior and protecting my interests. There's a difference. Erik's company is going to fail because of this. Erik's company was already failing. That's why he targeted me in the first place. He needed money, and he thought he could get it by destroying our marriage and then positioning himself as my business partner. Her face went pale. That's not true. Lara told me about his financial problems. I did my own research and confirmed it. Erik owes money to investors, contractors, and creditors. His company has been operating at a loss for 8 months. He never told me that. Of course he didn't. He told you what you wanted to hear so you'd help him get what he wanted. She was quiet for a long moment. What he wanted was me. What he wanted was access to my client list and my bank accounts. You were just the key to the door. I could see her processing this information, trying to reconcile it with whatever Erik had told her about his motivations. Even if that's true, she said finally, what you're doing is still wrong. What I'm doing is protecting myself from people who plan to destroy my reputation and my business for their own benefit. By destroying theirs first? By making sure they understand the cost of their choices. She stood up abruptly. I can't do this anymore. Good, then don't. I can't do this marriage anymore. I looked at her carefully. Are you asking for a divorce? I'm telling you I want one. Okay. She seemed taken aback by my calm response. Okay? Okay, call a lawyer. We'll work out the details. Just like that? Meira, you've spent the last 2 months planning to humiliate me publicly, destroy my business relationships, and leave me for your ex-boyfriend. Did you expect me to fight for the privilege of staying married to someone who sees me as an obstacle to overcome? I thought you'd be more upset. I was upset when I thought we had something worth saving. Now I know we don't. She left without another word, and I went back to my work. But I wasn't really focusing on the security report spread across my desk. I was thinking about timing and strategy and the beautiful, terrible momentum that was building towards something inevitable. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you're so smart. Wait until you see what happens next. Erik again. Still making threats, still escalating, still not understanding that every message he sent was evidence I could use against him. I forwarded the message to Morrison Partners, to my lawyer, and to Nicholas. Then I started planning Erik's final lesson in consequences. Because here's what Erik didn't understand about the security business. We don't just protect people from threats. We neutralize threats before they become problems. And Erik Delacroix had just officially become a problem that needed neutralizing. The next morning, I got a call from Morrison Partners. Erik's investment had been suspended, pending a full investigation into his conduct. His company's credit line had been frozen. His business partners were demanding explanations he couldn't provide. He's panicking, Nicholas reported after monitoring Erik's social media activity. He's making calls, sending desperate emails, trying to find emergency funding. Good. Panicked people make dramatic gestures. What kind of dramatic gestures? The kind that give us opportunities to finish this properly. I didn't have to wait long. That evening, as I was leaving my office, I found Erik waiting by my car. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, disheveled, agitated, and clearly operating on pure adrenaline. "You've destroyed everything," he said. "I've documented your criminal behavior and shared that documentation with relevant parties. You destroyed everything yourself. Morris & Partners dropped me. My investors are pulling out. My company is finished. Then maybe you shouldn't have spent your time planning elaborate revenge schemes instead of running your business. This isn't over." "Yes, it is. You're done, Erik. Go home, leave town, start over somewhere else." "I'm not going anywhere." "Then you're going to learn some very unpleasant lessons about what happens when you threaten people who are better prepared than you are." He took a step closer, and I could see the desperation in his eyes. "You think you've won? I think you've lost. There's a difference. Meira's leaving you. Meira made her choice, just like you made yours. She never loved you anyway. Maybe not, but she definitely doesn't love you. You were just useful to her until you weren't." That hit home. I could see the truth of it registering in his expression. "You want to know what's really going to happen?" I continued. "Meira is going to divorce me and take whatever she can get in the settlement. Then she's going to realize that you can't provide the lifestyle she's accustomed to, and she's going to move on to someone who can. And you're going to be alone, broke, and wondering how you managed to destroy your life so completely over a woman who never really wanted you in the first place. You're wrong." "Am I? When's the last time she returned your calls?" His silence was answer enough. "Go home, Erik. This is over." But as I drove away, I knew it wasn't really over. Erik was too proud, too desperate, and too stupid to accept defeat gracefully. He was going to make one more play, one final desperate attempt to salvage something from the wreckage of his plans. And when he did, I'd be ready for him. The break-in came on a Thursday night, during the worst thunderstorm Boston had seen all year. I was awake anyway, working in my home office, when the motion sensors triggered. Erik had chosen his moment well. The storm would mask any noise, and the neighbors were all inside with their windows closed. What he didn't know was that I'd been expecting this for weeks. After our confrontation in the parking lot, I'd upgraded my home security system with military-grade surveillance equipment. Every entrance was monitored, every room had multiple camera angles, and the whole system was connected to a backup power supply that could run for hours during outages. I watched on my monitor as Erik jimmied the back door lock, clumsily, like someone who'd learned the technique from YouTube videos. He was soaked from the rain and clearly agitated, probably having spent hours working up the courage for this moment. He made it 3 steps into my kitchen before the first trap activated. I'd spent considerable time designing a non-lethal but highly effective home defense system. The kitchen floor tiles were pressure-sensitive, connected to a network of devices I'd installed throughout the house. When Erik stepped on the wrong tile, several things happened at once. Bright strobe lights activated, disorienting him. A high-pitched alarm began wailing, and a fine mist of harmless but intensely irritating powder dispersed from hidden nozzles in the ceiling. Erik stumbled backward, cursing and rubbing his eyes. The powder was a mixture of cornstarch and capsaicin, completely safe but guaranteed to cause temporary blindness and intense sneezing fits. He should have left then. A smart person would have recognized that they were outmatched and retreated. But Erik wasn't smart, and he was too committed to his desperate plan to think clearly. Instead, he pushed forward into the living room, where the second trap was waiting. This one was simpler, but more humiliating. A tripwire connected to a bucket of washable paint mixed with biodegradable glitter. When Erik stumbled over the wire, the bucket tipped and covered him from head to toe in bright purple sparkles. Now he was blind, sneezing, and sparkling like a disco ball. But he kept going. The third trap was in the hallway leading to my office, the room where he probably thought I kept important documents or valuables he could steal or destroy. Motion sensors detected his approach and activated a series of small speakers hidden in the walls, each playing a different recording at maximum volume. Barking dogs, car alarms, and my personal favorite, a loop of his own voice reading the threatening messages he'd sent me. By now, Erik was completely disoriented. The combination of physical discomfort, sensory overload, and psychological pressure had reduced him to stumbling blindly through my house, leaving a trail of purple glitter and desperate profanity. He never made it to my office. The final trap was a simple one, a motion-activated camera flash combined with an automatic door lock. When Erik triggered the sensor, he was temporarily blinded by the flash and found himself trapped in my hallway, unable to see and unable to retreat. That's when I turned on the intercom system. "Hello, Erik," I said, my voice coming from speakers throughout the house. "Welcome to my home." "Soren, let me out of here." "I don't think so. See, you've just committed breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and probably a few other felonies. The whole thing has been recorded in high definition from multiple angles. This is entrapment." "No. Entrapment is when law enforcement induces someone to commit a crime they wouldn't otherwise commit. This is just you being stupid enough to break into the home of a security professional." Through the cameras, I could see him wiping paint from his eyes, trying to regain his vision. The capsaicin powder was still affecting him. His face was red and swollen, and he couldn't stop sneezing. "What do you want?" he asked. "I want you to understand something important about consequences. You've spent weeks threatening me, harassing my family, and trying to destroy my life. Now you're going to learn what happens when you pick a fight with someone who's better prepared than you are. I'll sue you for assault." "With what money? Your company's bankrupt, remember? And besides, I haven't assaulted you. Everything you're experiencing is the result of your own illegal entry into my home." I let him stew in the hallway for a few more minutes while I made some calls, first to Nicholas, then to my lawyer, then to the security company that monitored my system. "The police are on their way," I announced over the intercom, "along with several other people who are very interested in meeting you." "What other people?" "Well, there's a reporter from the Boston Globe who's been following the story of your business failures. There's a representative from Morris & Partners who wants to discuss your recent criminal activities. And there's Meira, who I thought should see exactly what kind of man she's been defending." That last part was a lie. I hadn't called Meira, and I had no intention of involving her in this final scene. But Erik didn't know that, and I could see the panic in his expression as he processed the implications. "You can't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you, Erik. You did this to yourself the moment you decided to break into my house." The police arrived first, followed by Nicholas and my lawyer. The reporter was fictional, and the Morris & Partners representative was busy with other matters, but Erik didn't need to know that. What mattered was that he was arrested, charged, and processed through the system that would ensure he faced real consequences for his actions. As they led him away in handcuffs, still covered in purple glitter and sneezing from the capsaicin, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Not because I'd hurt him, but because I'd proven a point that needed proving. Actions have consequences, and people who threaten others need to understand the cost of their choices. The next morning, Meira showed up at my door. She looked older somehow, worn down by weeks of stress and poor decisions. "I heard about Erik," she said. "Good news travels fast." "Soren, I need you to know that I never wanted it to go this far. But you were willing to let it go this far as long as you thought you'd benefit from it." She didn't deny it. "What happens now?" "Now you call your lawyer and we work out the divorce details. You move on with your life, and I move on with mine." "And Erik?" Erik's going to prison. Then he's going to spend several years trying to rebuild a life he destroyed through his own stupidity and arrogance. He says he loves me. Erik loves the idea of winning. He loves the fantasy of taking something away from me. But he doesn't love you, Meira. If he did, he wouldn't have used you as a pawn in his revenge scheme. She was quiet for a long moment. I think I knew that. Then why did you go along with it? Because I was angry, because I felt trapped, because he made it seem exciting and justified and, I don't know, because I wanted to hurt you the way I felt hurt. Hurt by what? By being married to someone who didn't need me. By being with someone who was content and stable and didn't create drama. By having a life that looked perfect from the outside but felt empty to me. It was the most honest thing she'd said to me in months. I'm sorry, she continued. Not just for the scheme, but for all of it. For wasting both our time in a marriage that wasn't working for either of us. Apology accepted. Just like that? Just like that. We both made mistakes, Meira. The difference is that I made mine out of love, and you made yours out of spite. She left that afternoon with 2 suitcases and a promise to have her lawyer contact mine within the week. I watched her drive away and felt nothing but relief. That evening, I sat on my back porch with a beer, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. My phone buzzed with messages from friends and family who'd heard about Erik's arrest, all offering support and congratulations. But the message that mattered most came from Lara. Thank you for handling this the right way. Meira needed to face consequences, and Erik needed to be stopped. I'm proud of you for not letting them destroy who you are in the process. I typed back, it's over now. Good, she replied. What's next? I looked out at my yard, at the house I'd bought and paid for and defended, at the life I'd built through hard work and careful planning. For the first time in months, the future felt full of possibilities instead of threats. Next, I figure out what I want my life to look like without people in it who see me as an obstacle to overcome. Sounds like a good plan. It was. And as I sat there in the gathering darkness, listening to the sounds of a neighborhood settling in for the night, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about building a life so good that their absence from it feels like a gift. Erik would spend the next few years learning about consequences in ways he'd never imagined. Meira would discover that the excitement she'd been craving came with a price she wasn't prepared to pay, and I would move forward, wiser and stronger, with a clear understanding of what I would and wouldn't accept from the people I chose to let into my life. The devil, as they say, is in the details. And I'd always been very good with details.